Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
And that's that. We can stand up and fight and ride all day through the night. We can make this change right and see our hopes and our dreams come to fruition. It's time to unite as one, calling out to our founding fathers. This is our mission to make you Hello, everybody, and welcome to Humanity Awaken Radio. As always, I'm with my co-host, Phil McNamara.
Hi everybody, how you doing today?
And today, we wanted to talk with you guys about the nature of the UFO phenomenon. What is it? What's behind it? What is the source of what we see in these lights in the sky? Now, we know that there's light in the sky. I mean, we're besides stars, besides planes. Like, people have been describing these accounts of death-defying feats of 90-degree turns in the sky that with normal gravity would kill any occupant inside. And we're seeing these things, objects that are just going from 0 to thousands of miles per hour in a couple seconds, just gone. And so today, we're going to talk about not accounts of seeing lights, but what they are, who's inside, who's piloting it. Is it even something of flesh and blood? Is it ultra dimensionals? Is it ET? Or is it just humans piloting test craft from Area 51? Who knows? But today, a couple of the subjects that we were going to cover are Tulpas, Cryptids, Succubus and Incubus, Djinn, demons, angels, extra-dimensional beings, ET versus human time travelers, inner-earth ancient human breakaway civilizations, or is it dinosaurs who took refuge in inner earth, developed intelligently and evolved over time? Are we dealing with Nazi breakaway groups? AI simulation? Or does this all lead back to one conscious intelligence in the ultimate highest dimension playing out a match on the cosmic chessboard? Tonight we're going to delve into these subjects, and basically how we're going to do it is that we're going to do kind of like a rapid fire segment here, and we're going to spend 5 minutes or so on each subject. And you're going to hear mine and Phil's interpretation on how this plays into the nature of the UFO phenomenon. What is it? Is it all these things? Is it a combination? Is it, who knows? We're going to delve into it and talk about some of the theories and hypothesize on what it could be. And yeah, we're going to start with it. I'm going to start a timer. Okay. And I wanted to lay the foundation of Tulpas for the next 10 minutes or so. And we are on the timer. So basically,
So tell us what a tulpa is, Brian.
a tulpa comes from Tibetan Buddhism and Indian Buddhism. And basically, it's translated as to build, to construct, magical emanation, conjured thing, a phantom. And according to Alexandra David Neal, tulpas are magic formations generated by a powerful concentration of thought that is materialized. Thought has taken physical form and is usually regarded as synonymous to a thought form. Now, basically, how we would describe this in today's day and age would be the conscious creation and manifestation of something that's been talked about so much in legend or in a story that it literally comes to life as its own entity through thought form.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that sort of fall into this category. One of the biggest ones for me, it would be something like Nessie is a really good one. There's a legend, as you probably all know, that there is some sort of a prehistoric creature living in this loch in Scotland, and it's been going on for. They've been seeing this thing in the lake for 500 years, which means it's either the longest living creature in the world or there's a lot of them. And I think that it's gotten to this point where people have started talking about it so much, and it's become such part of our lore in modern society, that when people go to Loch Ness to see something, they actually do see something. Whether it's there or not is not really the point. The point is, even if it isn't there, they're still seeing it. They're actually manifesting it. Consciousness and thought form is extraordinarily powerful.
Great, Phil. That was a great example of one. Something that I always like to quote when I talk about tulpas is referencing John A. Keel, who is the author of the Mothman Prophecies book. And this is a book that I've read going on maybe 5 times now. This entire Mothman subject completely fascinates me. And one of the ways that he starts off the book is talking about tulpas and how, he's chasing after these cryptid beings and UFOs and the ET inhabitants supposedly of these UFOs. And he's actually a non-believer in the ET hypothesis. He completely believes that there's some kind of ultra-dimensional force guiding these entities, and whatever they might be. Like, he spent 20 years of his life, he says at the time of the writing of the book, chasing after flying saucers. He's not concerned with lights in the sky anymore. He's concerned with the source.
Right.
And I think that's what we need to move on to, is that what is the source of these manifestations. And we have to be able to take on whatever it actually is. Like, maybe they're not ET, like I know a lot of us in this community think that they are. We have to be willing to accept that maybe it's something more than that. I, for one, think it's a combination of all these things.
Me too.
But something that's very clear that John Keel references is he talks about there's this story of this old writer. He used to write in the on his typewriter in this book, and then all of a sudden people started seeing this shadow-like entity that would walk around with a brimmed hat and this overcoat, and you could see him lurking in the shadows around the building, and people thought it was the old ghost of the writer. When you do a little more research on who owned that house and who the writer was, and you find out it was the author of the Shadow novels.
Oh wow! Okay, I did not know
Were they
that.
novels or comic books? That's one thing I can't remember. I think
wanna
they were
say
comic
they were
books.
comic books. Yeah.
I know there was
they
a
were.
film made about it too, and I loved the film. And but it's just it's funny, because like that's such a great example of what a tulpa really is, and we get into other examples of Joshua P. Warren was just on Coast to Coast a couple weeks ago talking about actual Santa Claus sightings. And
Yeah,
here's
really.
where we get into whoa, this is just ridiculous. Like, we grow up thinking, okay, there's a Santa Claus and there's no Santa Claus. Now you're telling me there is a Santa Claus again. I'm not saying there is or there isn't. I'm saying that it could be the manifestation of thought form, because so many people around the world create this visual image of what Santa Claus is, that people could be seeing actual tulpas of Santa Claus
That's
on the
very
roof with
possible.
reindeer.
And I know I've heard of stories where kids have actually heard the jingling of the reindeer's harnesses on their roof, and just had to run outside and like in the snow with their little bare feet. I was a huge believer in Santa Claus when I was a kid. I really thought, and I think for me it was really more a nature of believing that there was something really good out there that was actually trying to help everybody, that was trying to be cool, and and so I really am a big believer in this, and I do believe that so many of us believing in one thing can actually manifest it. I really believe in that very strongly.
Another thing, as far as creating thought forms or creating conscious creation of our reality, this is one of the biggest secrets the Illuminati tries to keep from us. Now, we could spend a whole episode covering this.
Oh my God.
But it's very important to note that they use our conscious creation through predictive programming in movies to bring about certain events that happen. There's a bunch of this pre-programming stuff that happened before 9/11. Once again, we could spend another entire episode talking about this.
And we will.
And we most likely will. And I just wanted to bring that up real quick. But as far as, let's see, what other kind of tulpas would there be? Well, let's see, like fairies. You know, a couple hundred years ago, if you saw a light in the sky, and
It was a fairy.
you knew it was a fairy. And if you saw a ring out in a field of crops, let's say, a circle in the crops, a crop circle, a couple hundred years ago, you knew it was a fairy ring. And it's just as simple as that. Throughout the decades, these John Keel refers to them as like the tricksters, you know, and how they're consistently as humanity, we create this mythos, these legends about what we're seeing and how we try to decipher them based off our technological advances at the time.
Right, and whether or not these beings are actual, and again, I'm just speaking to, I'm an Irishman, so the idea of fairies and elves and things like that has been written into our lore since we were created, since we first formed as a country. So there is a very real possibility that some of these beings are actual beings that people are seeing. Some of them are a manifestation of a thought form. And because everybody has the same general idea of what these things look like, what an elf looks like, what a troll looks like, I think it's really important to understand that this is actually something that is going on. There is a real phenomenon happening here, that thought forms can create reality. It does happen. And these people are not all crazy running around 200 years ago saying, I saw a fairy. It's very possible that they did.
It is very possible that they did at that time, and also lends to the credence of why we don't see them now. Is because it's not in our mythos, in our conscious creation anymore. And this is another thing that Keel called, he referred to this as, we are the haunted ones. Our entire earth is haunted.
Right.
And that this is partly what he refers to as the super spectrum. These beings that come out of the super spectrum, I know, I love that.
That's a good term.
That come to pop into our reality every now and then.
This is almost referenced a lot in Lord of the Rings, where I'm not going to spoil it for you, but let's just say that one of the kinds of beings decided to sit and to leave the realm of man, and that's sort of an allegory to the idea that maybe some of these fairy folk, whoever or whatever they are, had powers beyond what we have and are willing to step out of the realm of man so that we can, so that they're not able to be seen by us anymore. So, they may still be present, but they're just not present to our sight anymore.
Also, on the topic of Lord of the Rings in this Middle Earth topic.
Oh yeah.
I'm almost positive that this whole thing that J.R. Tolkien came up with is completely like whistleblower leaked. And I'm pretty sure David Wilcock has mentioned how he's spoken to a whistleblower that this is all, he was read in, J.R. Tolkien, about all this. And it's just really interesting, when you start to see the other side of how haunted our Earth really is, or however you want to look at it. Okay, let's move on to the next subject. Okay. Let's move on to Succubus and Incubus. Now, a lot of people have heard this term, and basically what this is a succubus is a female demon or supernatural entity in folklore, traced back to medieval legend, that appears in dreams and takes the form of a woman in order to seduce a man. Usually through sexual activity, the male counterpart is the incubus. Now, let's take a second just kind of ponder what they're talking about here. If we were to look at this in modern times, this sounds like your classic alien abduction story.
Correct. And especially the fact that it's talking about a sexual attack.
Mm.
And what are they looking for if they're going to sexually attack you? Probably some DNA. And there's only one way to get it. And so this may be one of the medieval interpretations of what they were seeing, and possibly that whatever it was that was doing this, be it an extraterrestrial or an whatever it was, could actually manifest itself as something that the people that were being abducted or being attacked would register with. So it wasn't so frightening, but it was actually something that, like the form of a beautiful woman, would really be something that most men would be like, okay, well, that's fine then.
The manifestation, the thought form of this coming through, and also too the consent, them being able to pretty much shapeshift how they look to have the consent of the man, or vice versa with the woman. This also, let's just combine this topic in with the Djinn, because this is very similar, and this comes from Arab mythology and Islamic mythology, where basically this was the original reference to the genie. And in these cultures, these guys are literally linked back to basically like the devil, and they're like trickster beings. And there's a lot of people who have done some really intense research on these guys, and they are not people you'd want to meet. These are basically the exact kind of people that, okay, so picture, let's put a record label, like major label, perfect record label situation. You sign the contract, but you got to sell your soul. These are the kind of people that like you're dealing with, is these kind of Djinn manifestations people talk about, or like the crossroads. Saw the devil on the crossroads, and like that whole backstory of that. It kind of comes back from these old Djinn mythos stories.
And it's really important to know that the modern classic manifestation of a genie, where it's, you know, Barbara Eden in her cute little outfit, or, you know, the Robin Williams character in the Disney movie, is not what a genie is. This is a very dark, frightening creature if you come across it, and it will actually, you know, take your soul, or take your, you know, it will make a deal with you, and if you don't come through with your end of the deal, you're in big trouble. And that's the myth that's been created, and so almost all of our modern interpretations of these beings is really cute and funny, and oh, look how nice, but the reality of it is they are very dark, a lot of them.
And they usually show up in manifestations of actual flesh and blood people.
Correct.
And like there's stories of you know, high power stockbrokers, or, you know, like people on Wall Street, or politicians. You know, some people even say that the Illuminati are actually all Djinn.
I've heard that that's true, and they're all tricksters, and they use modern convenience to actually manifest whatever it is that they want in this world.
If you think about it, I mean, a lot of our totalitarian laws could be viewed as a Djinn laws, almost like, hey, we're gonna provide you with protection and stuff, but like we need to create homeland security.
Correct. And it just, you know, just real quickly on that subject, you know, talking about your rights being taken away. Well, you can't take away something that you've never offered. Your rights are yours, and they're not something that can be negotiated. So when you talk about that, and when you see something that, if you get into a situation where you feel like you're being tricked, just think about what you just heard about being maybe attacked by a genie or a djinn, because this may be what's actually happening to you, and just be wary of what's going on around you.
It may be happening on more of the supernatural, magical realms, as far as the exchange and consent. There's something that these people who believe in magic, or even some of these supernatural beings, consent is the number one thing. Kind of like with the black-eyed children, if they ask to be invited into your home, and if you let them in, it's like you don't want to let them in. Basically,
it's the same thing that goes along with the legend of a vampire. If you invite a vampire into your home, now the vampire has control over you. But if you don't, then it can't cross the threshold of your home.
Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to demons and angels. Now, this is a big topic amongst, like, here's a way that I actually communicate with my uncle on this. Because we both agree that there's something going on. Like, we're both on the same page with, like, okay, he's very Christian.
Okay.
He knows that there's something going on. He's a big Alex Jones listener, and like, he knows there's an Illuminati and all that, and like, to him, they're all manifestations of the devil. They follow Luciferian worship, and I'm with him. I'm right there with him.
I'll go with that.
But where we cross the line is that he says there are no UFOs, there are no aliens. Anything of that, it says in the Bible, is a deception, and it's the devil. And okay, like, we might differ there, but I can also this is a good thing to talk about with people that, who might view this differently. It's like a different language. Like, I have a relationship with him today because I'm willing to step outside of my box and say, okay, these ETs might be demons or angels. So when I talk to him about this subject, I just change my terminology and talk about demons or angels. To me, it's the same thing. To him, it's one particular thing. But I actually have a relationship with him because we're able to talk on a similar ground here. And a lot of these negative ETs, from stories we hear about, do operate somewhat like demons. Even back to the Succubus and Incubus. I mean, alien abduction, just right off the bat, taking you without your consent, is, even part of the whole. We can get into, the demonic possession. And I've heard these stories of, there's these beings that can latch on to your chakras and literally hold your chakras hostage. And some people who have psychic abilities can actually see these things on the backs of people, usually Wall Street people or politicians, high power people who have most likely sold their soul in some way, shape, or form. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how selling your soul actually works and how that goes down, because how that actually happens, but there's something going on there where these beings have consent to do that.
It may not even be a matter of selling your soul. It may be a matter, like you said, of consent. Once you've decided to descend into this world, then suddenly these beings are allowed to do something just because you have now given your consent. I'm a big believer in the angelic realms. I believe that there's an actual realm of beings that we have considered angels. They are they're not even an extraterrestrial race, they're an extra dimensional race of beings. They are, they're part of my own personal spirituality, and so it's really something that I believe in very strongly, and I've seen the sort of the events around that, and asking them for help, and seeing the results of that. So I know that for me exists. And the beings that, they may be able to manifest themselves on our plane, and a lot of the mythos around the world, because almost every country in the world has an angel myth, has angelic beings that are attached to their myth, to their culture. So this can't be something that's not happening. It's just a matter of finding out now what it actually is and who they actually are and where they're actually from, which is most important.
And when it comes down to, like, let's talk about angelic beings for a second. I think a lot of people have this misnomer that, okay, when people are in the presence of ETs, they either describe one of two symptoms. One, in complete terror, fear, which they're probably in the vicinity of negative beings, or complete love and light and just pure bliss. They've never experienced so much happiness in their life. And we're at 1 minute on the subject, but I'm gonna go another couple minutes, because this is really important to talk about. So basically, but here's the deception, is that these negative beings can for sure make you feel complete bliss if they want to.
That's the tricky part, is that you have to disseminate what it is that's actually presenting itself to you.
And who's tricking you? Like, everyone, it seems like in these advanced civilizations and cultures, want to be viewed as gods. It's this big thing to follow, unless you found complete total, you're ascended to the higher levels, to where, like, you becoming one with the universe and you don't care about those kind of things. But because of Corey Good's testimony, it's become very clear to me that these beings that people talked about, of the love and light beings, the Nordics, the the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, like white skin, look like they come from what is it?
Like Scandinavia.
Scandinavia, something like that. Completely beautiful. And when you see them, you just feel filled with love and light and everything. Cool. But we just got testimony from Corey Good that these guys are actually called the Garthans. They don't come from another planet. They're an ancient Earth, inner Earth species. Well, they're just like literally humans.
Yeah, they're literally humans.
But they passed themselves off like gods, and they did the same thing to the Nazis in the 40s. And this is a whole nother subject. If you want to get more in detail than that, watch Cosmic Disclosure with Corey Good and David Wilcock. But it's very clear that, you know, some of these beings might just be neutral as well.
They're just trying to exist on the same, you know, on the same planet that we are. And when people say that, you know, we're not alone in the universe, well, we're not alone on this planet either. We're not the only. It's becoming a little bit more clear now that we may be just one of several species that inhabit this planet, and you know, like I, you know, a lot of what's going on is that we don't know what's here on this Earth.
Let's also get into the AlienHuman Hybrid program too. From what we hear from like people like Yvonne Smith or like Barbara Lamb, who are doing the regressions on people, we're having some very, very interesting experiences with being impregnated with half ET, half human hybrids, and basically how that goes down, which is very similar to the Jesus story, actually, where this artificial insemination takes place, or this miracle with a virgin takes place, which this actually happens modern day too, where a girl who's 15, let's say, will go, never had sex in her life, will go to the doctor and say, doctor, you know, like, I think I'm pregnant, but this is impossible because I've never had intercourse before. And the doctor will see and say, oh my gosh, you do, you have a baby on the way. Like, let's get you back up for checkups and everything and blah, blah, blah. And then they don't have any remembering of an experience, but they go back to the doctor and they say, okay, it's on, it's you're 6 months in, cool. They come back for their next checkup the next week, and the doctor says the baby's gone. It's just completely gone. Did you miscarriage? She said, no, I don't know what's going on. And then they come back for another checkup the next week, the baby's back again. And just this goes on and on and on. And this sounds to me a lot like the story of how Jesus came about. And you have to ask yourself, you know, is like immediately a lot of people might go to, is this some kind of demonic thing? Like, if we look at the Bible, it was a good thing. What's really going on here? We hear these regressions that people have of being on board the spacecraft with the ETs, and the ETs will show the mother their unborn child that was taken from them that's already a couple of years old, even like a teenage age. And well, according to how the regressions go and what they've understood from, this isn't just like 3 people having this experience. Like, this is a program. This has been happening to so many people. When they're shown their child, it will look more alien than human. Maybe they'll have human eyes, but totally gray alien features, you know? And they'll instantly have a connection, this kind of psychic connection of knowing that's my child, the way a mother just knows those kind of things. And part of the program is they'll have them hold the child, give the child love and warmth, because apparently these grays who are doing the abductions can't give that to the child. They need to periodically have abductions where they bring the mother back with the child so that it can have that proper upbringing. Now you have to ask yourself, and according to some of these ET abductees, alien abductees, they're trying to get these hybrids into civilization. And you say, like, why are they doing that? You know, is this a whole bunch of like Antichrist being born into the world? You know, that's what someone who's very religious might say. Or is this, who knows, you know, but we're hearing these stories that are just so, like, you can't make this stuff up.
You can't. And honestly, you know, it filters into the nature of what's good and evil. And honestly, you know, during the 50s when Eisenhower was president, he made a deal with the Greys, and the deal was apparently that they could abduct 5. They had a specific number of people that they were allowed to abduct. I heard it's as high as 5 million people that they were allowed to abduct. Now, obviously, they didn't. They broke that treaty and abducted many, many more. Maybe who knows how many more million, maybe 50 million, 60 million people. They did this because whatever the Greys are, whether they are us in the future, whether they are a race of beings whose genetic signature is dying and they need something to restart it, that's part of why they're doing this. And so there's a whole program going on that most of us have never been aware of, and this may be freaking people out because this is such a new concept that there are these beings here.
I've had an intuitional theory on if this is the case of what Phil's talking about, which is a very popular theory. And it's not really just a theory. It's what regression hypnosis therapists like Yvonne Smith or Barbara Lamb or some of these other people in the field have come to this conclusion after working with a couple hundred abductees. And it's become clear to me that these Greys, at least the biological ones, could very well be the Illuminati from the future. Now, this might be really, really wild for people to hear.
Wow, I hadn't heard that one. That's new.
And if you think about it, the Greys could be some kind of, like we know if a human's in space too long, they start to just deteriorate and everything kind of shrinks a bit, and their skin would react differently because they're not in the Schumann resonance of the Earth and the typical the Earth movement, the way it moves. I know we try to recreate that in spacecraft, but in our space shuttles, but I can't imagine it would be just the way it would be, especially not having the proper sunlight and all those things. So the body would evolve a certain way, and if these are us, or not really us, but the Illuminati from the future, they would be coming back in time before some kind of catastrophe on their timeline. They would need to be getting pure tissue samples from, and I would suspect that these people with the Rh negative blood, which is supposedly what most 90% of what alien abductees have, or
right,
from German descendants, or Native American descendants, are the main type of blood the Illuminati has, because they're so obsessed with keeping their bloodline pure. And once again, that's my own theory, but that's what I've come to an understanding of through the research that I've done, and that makes sense to me intuitionally.
I also, and it's funny that you say that because I have a similar but a little bit different take on what Greys are, and this is just my personal. There are many Grey
Real
species.
quick before I forget,
Yeah.
we do know that some of the Greys are part machine, part biological, and that would go back to why the elite are so obsessed with transhumanism.
Right.
The mixing of machine and man, and it just that's something that blows my mind too. But sorry, I wanted you to hear what you were going to say.
Okay, so part of the transhumanism is part of it, but I believe that there are several Grey races that actually exist within our own galaxy that are currently existing. However, the ones that seem to be abducting people are maybe a very, very ancient race that in the future or even now currently is in dire turmoil. They are dying, they are frightened, they are trying to find something, and maybe our DNA is one of the only things that's stable enough to hold their genetic code.
That's very interesting. I do like that a lot, that theory. And let's even take that a step further. It's very obvious that there's multiple types of Greys.
Yes.
It's so obvious. Like, there's some that are off planet, there's some that might be inner Earth, there's some might be us from the future,
And
time
gray
traveling back.
And Gray is one color. They're sort of
color,
they're gray,
Green,
some
blue.
green. I've seen light blue, grayish blue.
Wait, just to be clear, you've seen
Not
or you
seen,
know?
but I mean I am
research.
aware of from research.
I just want to make sure we clear that
I
up.
have not seen them. I hope I do, but but I have not seen one.
And also, too, I do believe that the different races are... I think that we have this misconception with DTs that we look at one race as generically one view of they're good or bad. Like, some people on the human race are good or bad. It doesn't mean we all have one agenda. It's just... I think we have to get out of that frame of mind because it's hindering us from looking at the bigger picture. And some of these races might have totally different agendas. And to them, it might be positive for their race, but to us, it's negative.
And and that's exactly the thing, is it reaches back into what's good and evil. And, we say, well, these people are evil or whatever. But the reality is they're not evil. They're doing what they need to do to survive for themselves. and the reaction from us is considered evil. So I just wanted to make a little clarity on that, what that is.
Okay, I'm setting the timer for another 5 minutes. Phil, why don't you start us off with cryptids and go from there.
Okay, so a lot of people don't know what a cryptid is, and I'm going to give you the classic definition, which is a cryptid is a legendary creature that are rumored to, or suspected to exist, but for which there's no conclusive evidence and is still missing. There are people that are actually cryptid hunters.
Why don't you name a couple
Okay, um,
of the beings?
Okay, so I'll give you some ideas. So we're talking Sasquatch. We're talking the flying pterosaurs of Papua New Guinea. We're talking about chupacabra. We're talking about thunderbirds. We're talking about any animal that has not been actively sighted but is rumored to exist.
Mothman.
Mothman. The dinosaur that supposedly that's loose in the Congo.
Nessie, of course.
Nessie. Yeti. Any of these animals, and there's a lot of different ones. And even things like wendigos, which is a Native American animal that used to be human and then is a guardian of the forest. Dragons. Anything like this is considered part of cryptozoology, and there are a lot of people. You can look it up on the internet. You can just go and type in cryptozoology, and you'll get just pages and pages of information.
I want to note that this is a serious subject that has been studied for many decades by very credible scientists, including this guy's actually very credible. I'm kind of blanking out on his name. He was friends with John Keel. I'll look it up right now. Continue.
While you're doing that, this is a subject that's
Ivan T. Sanderson.
Okay.
Ivan T. Sanderson. And this guy was really well respected, and he did a lot of work on cryptozoology and crypto creatures.
Yeah, and they're finding skeletons. They're finding all sorts of things all over the world that they can't identify. I mean, think about it this way. Giants. Dinosaurs, by and large, were considered a crypto creature until they were discovered about 100 years ago, or rediscovered, depending on how you look at it. This is a very serious science, and let's put this in perspective. On our Earth, as of now, there is maybe 10% of the actual living creatures that have been discovered. That means that 90% of the things that currently live on or in the Earth have not been discovered yet. So there's a lot of room for beings to be here and creatures to be here that we have never seen before, and that still live on the fringes of our modern society. And you see these things in movies all the time, and we're like, oh, we'll run go see these movies and go, oh, that was amazing. But these things actually do exist, and I believe that the giant squid was one. There's still talk that there might be megalodons in the ocean that nobody's seen. This is all part of a very, very large planet that we live on, and so we're not seeing a lot of these animals. I believe that a lot of them exist. I honestly, I love to go up in the wilderness. I love to walk around up there. I love to, you hear things, you see things. I've heard, and this is just a personal experience for myself. I was camping with some friends, and I heard a sound, a growl. I'm pretty familiar with all of the animals that live in a forest. This thing I'd never heard before. I don't know what it was. I couldn't even begin to tell you, but I know that it sent chills down my spine. So I know that it was something I was not used to hearing.
Phil, why don't you get into a little bit more about how dinosaurs could have taken refuge after a cataclysm?
This is another huge joy for me. I love to talk about this. So it is my contention, and a lot of people in the cryptozoology field, that whatever cataclysm happened that killed the dinosaurs did not kill them all. It just didn't. And because if it did, there would be no alligators, there would be no snakes, there would be no turtles. So these animals exist. We see them, we know about them. So I believe that one of the species or more of raptors have descended into the earth, lived in caves, and went for 65 million years of unchecked evolution. Now, if you put that in, if you think about that for a minute, think about what a being, an animal could evolve into as a result of having 65 million years.
We've intelligently evolved within a matter of a
Well, the numbers
hundred
are,
or
yeah,
thousands of years, but we're talking millions. 65 million years of evolution and more than enough time to intelligently evolve. And we're kind of getting into the realm of, reptilians. And I know this is a really, really, really hard subject for people to wrap their heads around, but for me, it's a lot easier to wrap my head around this if you think of it in the sense of they don't have to be ET to be standing 2 feet, on 2 feet, intelligently talking reptilian beings. They could have just been remnants from our own dinosaurs on this planet and have gone and created their own civilizations in the inner earth.
And this is exactly one of the things that Corey Good talks about, is that apparently there is a race of what they call the raptors. And the raptors are a small warlike species of raptor. And there are, so this sort of lends credence to what I was saying.
I want to make it really clear too that Corey Good is not the only whistleblower who has talked about these raptor beings. Actually, before Corey Good went on record talking about this, Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot has been interviewing Mark Richards, who is also involved in the secret space program, who had a lot of contact with these raptor type beings. Also, one other point I want to make before I move on is we know that in mainstream science has speculated this very clearly, that the possibility of alternate or parallel universes and dimensions and realities. And I would seem to think that these things happen or split on timelines when there's major events, like let's say a cataclysm. And with the dinosaurs, you would say that on our timeline, a cataclysm happened. On another one didn't happen. So on this other timeline, it's possible to think that these reports of these reptilian entities that people see could also be from our own alternate Earth timeline. And they could have just evolved naturally without having to take refuge from any cataclysm.
Correct. So, there's a lot of different answers to this, and that's why, we want people to really do some research and look at this and be objective. Don't just, negate it just because it doesn't fall into your category of reality, because reality is really subjective.
Touche.
It really is. It's even down to, and this is just going sort of a little bit off topic, but just to say this for a second, the way people look at the world is absolutely individual. The way I see the world is completely different than the way Brian sees the world, like physically sees it. Color, texture, it's all different.
We only see about 2 to 3% of the electromagnetic spectrum of light, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Let's apply that to the light we know that exists in the known universe. This is not conspiracy. This is not theory. This is scientific fact. So you have to think about all the different realities, all the different colors, all the different realities that we can't see. And we have to factor that into the equation. Because if we're only seeing 2 to 3%,
that means
we're not seeing
97% of it that we're not seeing.
And we have to get out of this egotistical state of mind that we're supreme and, we're the most intelligent species out there right now and blah, 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 blah.
There may actually be things on this planet, creatures on this planet that are smarter than we are that we actually know. I'm saying, dolphins,
perhaps the dolphin,
whales, cetaceans may not even be.
Let's take my dog, for example. Okay. We know, I'm going to make 2 examples with the dog. The dog sees black and white, unaware that we see color. And that's pretty wild. They probably assume that we just see black and white with them. Think about some other entity that's higher evolved than us that sees colors that we can't even see. Also, besides that, my dog is very smart. And I've seen other dogs do this too, where if their stomach is feeling not too good, they'll literally go and eat grass, and somehow it makes them just throw up whatever's going on with their stomach, and they throw it up and they walk around, they're all happy and they're fine. Now to us, we don't think that dogs can communicate with each other in the way that we do so clearly. how do you pass that down in a dog lineage to know that if you eat grass, you're going to throw it up and you're going to feel better? It's like you swallowed the... It's kind of like with humanity. It's like we swallowed the poison of all this stuff that's not truth, and we have to vomit it to survive it. And but how do... But that's a bigger allegory right there. But for dogs, how do they just survive? How do they know how to pass that down without actually communicating in the way that we know how to communicate? I have a theory that, I mean, most animals might even be telepathic. Like, how do we know? How do you measure if an animal is telepathic?
Exactly, and even talking to some of the cetaceans that are out there, these animals have echolocation. They can bounce their energy off of an item in front of them to see it.
Similar
We
to how
can't
ants
do
do.
that. Or
Like how
maybe we
ants
can
do.
do that.
Ants do that.
Ants do it. Ants are
Bats.
pretty organized. Bats do it. Animals have these amazing abilities that we don't have, or at least that we may have had in the past but have lost. And we're now, and so when we see somebody that has some sort of abnormal, they have some sort of ability that we don't have, we consider them, abnormal. But maybe that was the norm from before, and maybe now we're just starting to realize that that's what's really going on.
Okay, so we definitely went over the 5-minute mark, but let's
All right.
spend another 2 minutes and wrap up on this subject. Phil, take it away.
Okay, so just going on talking about cryptids again. I just wanted to get back to this. We're always finding new species of animals. They find something new every day. They just found a new crab. They've just found a new, they're always finding some new animal. It's not going to be too long before we start to see some of these things creep up in our mainstream. I'm not, I'm a big believer that everything exists until it's proven that it doesn't exist. I'm just backwards when it comes to that. I'm not one of those people that needs to be proven that it does exist. I already accept that it exists. And then when you say, oh, there's no way that this could possibly exist because of this, I'll be willing to accept that. But honestly, we need to really start looking around and be more aware of our surroundings, and know that, we're only 10% into what's actually here. And it's going to be really cool to find out what's actually here. I'm excited to find that out. I'm always listening and wanting people to come forward and talk about what they saw or what they know about.
And to end this with how it started, I believe, Phil, that you said at the beginning of this topic that we know more about the surface of the moon than we do our own oceans.
Absolutely. We have 5% of the oceans have been mapped, and much more percent of the moon has been mapped. So think about what could possibly be down there. It's really kind of cool. And that includes, possible extraterrestrial bases and beings and mermaids and all of these kind of things. So that's my take on that.
Great. Let's move on to extra-dimensional beings.
Ooh, yay.
Timer set. 5 minutes. Here we go. Okay, you want to go or should I go?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I honestly, extra-dimensional beings are really an intrinsic part of all of this this work that we're doing, and what it really is that there's a man named Drunvalo Melchizedek, and he talks about dimensions as music. So you have a dimension, and then you have 12 overtones, and then the next dimension, and then 12 overtones, and then the next dimension. So it's like a musical scale. So there are beings that exist on all of the different levels according to what his research has said. This is kind of exciting when you think about it, because there are beings like the angels that live in the angelic realm. There are light beings that live in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th dimensions. Or you can call them densities. A lot of times they're referred to as densities. And and ourselves as a human life form, there is some evidence to suggest that we actually live in several different dimensions at the same time. When you're seeking quote unquote God, sometimes what you're looking for is your highest self, the highest dimension of who you actually are, and that can be something that we translate into being God. But what it really is the highest manifestation of your, eternal existence. So this is something that I'm a big believer in. I absolutely love the idea that there are beings that can transmute into our reality and interact with us, and we call them angels or spirits or whatever you want to call it. But these beings are here to teach us, and you know, and there's a way to actually ascend into this ourselves.
Phil, you said that so beautifully, and I want to echo what you're saying there because you're talking more about the spiritual aspect of these extra dimensional beings, and you have a really interesting firsthand experience with. I believe you referred it to me as your ninth dimensional self, and I was seeing if you wanted to tell that story.
You have to refresh my memory.
The where you're talking about where you actually met your higher self.
Okay. So I'm a big meditator.
I want to make it clear, you guys, just so you know, that Phil is literally the most spiritual person I know in my life. And for him to talk about this stuff in the way that he does, he's not just speaking off the cuff. It's from some serious firsthand personal accounts, and he's done the work to be able to speak on these subjects the way he does.
So I've been trying to find, I've been on a spiritual path since I was a little kid, and I'm a big meditator. I meditate every day. I do at least 25 minutes to an hour, depending on what my schedule is. And so during one of my meditations, I've been asking to meet my highest self. And during one of my meditations, I had an experience where I met with an entity that I have now come to believe is my ninth dimension self. It is the highest dimension that I personally go to. There may be more, but that's as high as I go, which is a pure being of light, a warm, loving, compassionate, perfect creature. And it's part of my own spiritual journey. And I communicate with this with myself. I communicate with what I call my highest self on a regular basis, and I give myself guidance.
This could also be where intuition lives. Just
It,
want
it
to throw
is
that out. When you
intuition.
told me this story, this is instantly where my intuition went to. Is like Phil's talking about literal intuition right now.
Intuition literally is a skill. It's a sense. You hear sense of humor, sense of intuition. It's not, sense of smell.
Another way to look at this is Phil's actually been in contact and had a conversation with his actual intuition.
Yeah. And this is and it's a very real place. It's a very real being. It's a very real thing. I'll get more into this. We'll talk more about this in future episodes, but I just wanted to put that out there that there is a lot on the extra dimensional world that we are just barely scratching the surface of.
And to end this specific topic, we want to make it clear that mainstream science has identified mainstream that there are at least 12 to 13 different dimensions.
Correct.
And this is a very, very popular theory. They might have even gone as far now as saying that it's fact. So, okay, that's time on that topic. However, I think it was good. I liked how you went into more of the spiritual aspect of that subject. Let's talk more about the ET extra dimensional factor in the sense of ETs interacting with us, like let's say like gray, alien abduction type of scenarios where I'll go on. I'll speak on this subject because like I've done a lot of research into the alien abduction phenomenon, and hold on one sec. I'll start the timer. Here we go. 5 minutes. So a lot of people who have conscious recollection of their alien abduction experiences or who have been regressed and remember these. For people who don't know, you can go under regression hypnosis with a therapist, a licensed therapist, who will go into their subconscious of previous times when they've had, let's say, PTSD. And so people will go back and remember these alien abduction experiences. And some people recount experiences where they'll see, ETs walking through walls. or they will go through the wall with them. Now, this just sounds totally crazy when you think about it, because we're not supposed to be able to go through walls. We're physical beings, can't go through a physical wall. And at the same time, you have to ask yourself, like, are they using technology to do this? Are they actually extra dimensional? Or have they just, found technology to bypass physical objects? And there's also the topic of astral alien abductions, where a lot of people will report their physical body doesn't even leave the bed at night, and they're all of a sudden in the spacecraft, and they're getting abducted astrally in whatever way, shape, or form. And these topics are very interesting, and they need to be discussed to kind of figure out the origin back to what this whole show is about, is the nature of the UFO phenomenon. What are we really dealing with here, And astral abductions also sound very similar to me as the Succubus and Incubus realms of abduction and how that all works. Also, the question, too, is like earlier in the show we were talking about consent. Where is the consent with alien abduction of allowing these entities to do this? Which always gets me thinking, there's this like prime directive that a lot of whistleblowers talk about with ETs. And the one problem that I have with trying to understand this is, where is the line between consent and non-consent, and what are the loopholes around that? And it's one of these big questions that I've yet to figure out in all my years of researching this.
See, what I want, and this is the thing that sort of speaks to this too. Is it possible that the people that made this deal with the Greys gave consent for the human race?
That would make so much sense.
And said, you know what, we, as the representatives of our people, say that this is okay?
Well, it's also, too, like, on the latest episode of Cosmic Disclosure, David Wilcock was mentioning how Jordan Maxwell talked about how on a certain amount of dollar bills, how they're actually cataloged with our soul numbers. That the Federal Reserve prints, this is really wild to talk about, but like the Federal Reserve prints money, because it goes back to this black magic Babylonian money magic system where they can actually, our souls, I guess, have numbers, like we're like cataloged, when we come into this world, and somehow our soul numbers are printed on each dollar that's gone into circulation with the Federal Reserve. How that all works, I obviously have no idea, but it's just interesting when you talk about that, Phil, because it's like there's this cataloging system where thousands, maybe a million people are having alien experiences, some good, some not good, some abductions, some with consent, some without consent. And I know with my experiences, I actually gave consent unknowingly. I said, I saw them in the sky when I had my experience, and I said, before I even saw them, I put my thought out to the universe and said, I want to see these guys. Literally, like, in my head, it was like, good or bad, I want to see what's going on. I'm ready to see. And the second I said that, they started showing up, and they did not leave until I was just completely terrified, petrified, and a complete PTSD mess. And since then, I've recovered from the PTSD, thank God. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're all negative because I had a negative experience. Then again, I don't even know if it really wasn't an experience or they're making me feel that way, or if it was necessary for my soul growth. I'm open to everything. I know that there is a positive manifestation of this in the universe. I know there's a negative, and I don't lean either way. I'm right in the middle. All those experiences, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be on this show talking with you right now. I probably wouldn't have met Phil in the way that we did. I wouldn't have had the synchronicities in my life that led me to this path. And at the end of the day, as horrible as they might have been during that time, I'm grateful for them because I know that it was part of my soul journey to become who I am.
And that's the thing. Another thing we have to talk about too, and we probably won't have a lot of time to do this, but I want to talk a little bit about the idea of negative and positive.
Duality.
This is our universe. This universe that we currently inhabit is a dual universe. We have good and bad, fat and skinny, tall and short. All these different things.
Night and day. Man, woman,
man
and the
and woman.
polarity rules our universe,
And
good or bad.
Right, and it's all been split. And so when we're looking at a negative or a positive situation with an extraterrestrial or an intraterrestrial or whatever terrestrial we're talking about, it doesn't necessarily mean they're evil. It means that their agenda, for our purposes, for what we are perceiving, is considered a darker agenda, or a less than or a malevolent, or they're harming us in some fashion. Whereas a lot of the other beings are actually very, very benevolent and want to help. What does helping mean? If they're taking our DNA to create their own race or to help their own race survive, is that benevolent or malevolent?
That was something I was just thinking while you were talking about that. And we have to get out of the mindset, are they good or bad?
Yeah.
It's not as simple as that. It's just not as simple as that.
Yeah, we got to stop that. Yeah. And also, I don't like the term, I happen to not like the term aliens. I think that's a negative term. I think extraterrestrials, ultra dimensional beings, whatever words we use, we have to start changing the language too, so that we start to because imagine, when you hear the word alien, you think you have an automatic response. When you hear the word extraterrestrial, you have a different response. So
agreed.
Just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, let's move on to the next subject, which is AI simulation. I'll start off with this. This is something that's been talked about in the New Age conspiracy kind of community for the last couple of years now, and I've had a really, really, really rough time dealing with this subject because, this whole idea that we live in a, video game reality kind of situation. What's the term, Phil? This hologram. I have such a hard time dealing with that, and the first time I came into understanding of where it kind of made more sense to me intuitionally, because I don't go into belief with anything until it hits me intuitionally. That's just how I work. If it hits my heart and resonates, I know that is truth. And with this AI simulation topic, this goes back to, mainstream science has talked about this a lot, actually. That are we living in a hologram? That topic has been in tons of newspapers and online sources, and just type it into Google. You'll find an incredible amount of mainstream sources of credible people talking about that. And
I've actually had a really hard time with it too, because it's so, for me, it's so far out there. It's like, okay, so we're this matrix, that we're living in, this holographic. It's like for those of you that are Star Trek fans, it's the holodeck. You can go in and create your reality based on giving it a few commands, and that is really, for me, it's terrifying. I don't like that idea at all.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, I go down, I pinch myself, I know that's real. I walk outside, I walk my dog, I know that I'm seeing the sunlight, I know I'm seeing all the the beautiful greenery all around me, I know I'm feeling the wind on my face. How could that be a hologram or some kind of simulation? And let's go back to the Matrix movie. That movie is just so eye-opening to understand, are we living in some kind of computer simulated reality, a computer code? As if we're in it, how do we know that we're in it? Because this is all we know.
And who?
The universe operates as kind of like a hologram or a computer program.
And who is actually controlling it?
And this goes back to the bigger subject, which I think we should just include on that note, is does this just lead back to one conscious intelligence in the ultimate highest dimension playing out a match on the cosmic chessboard? And this is something that we really have to ask ourselves, because all these subjects we talked about, angels, demons, tulpas, just the manifestation, the origins of life itself, and all these manifestations of the UFO phenomenon, is there some higher source guiding this. And this also goes back to besides the AI or hologram or whatever, it's like, are we all one? Are we all manifestation of one creator?
Let me just jump in on this one, and this also goes back to something that I heard Grenville and Melchizedek talk about. And I'm just going to say as a what if scenario. What if there is a, before this universe was created, there were other universes before it. There was something before the quote unquote Big Bang. Let's just say that existed. So then in that case, what's really going on here is this. These beings are very high dimensional. And they decided that in order to have a living experience, they would actually infuse themselves into the universe that they're creating. So when we hear the terms God is everything or everything is everything, that's actually true. These beings have actually created a universe in which they are infused into it. Mm. So when we're having a creative moment, that's part of their manifestation as well. So everything is it's a school of thought. It may not be exactly what's going on, but it's something I actually sort of believe in. That it's a thinking, living, breathing, creative universe that's ever expanding with its own consciousness. So the universe itself is consciousness.
Hmm. That's a beautiful way to put it and to wrap it up, Phil.
I do my best.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you liked this and enjoyed this episode. I know we had a lot of fun doing it, and hopefully you guys have a better, a more broad understanding of, what could be behind this UFO phenomenon and what the nature of it is. Is it the super spectrum, like John A. Keel talks about? Is it the Tulpas? Is it angels and demons? If you guys want, we want you guys to be involved in the conversation.
Absolutely.
Make sure to leave comments. Tell us if you like this video. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. And with that, we'll leave you guys with that and join us in the next episode. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.